Hey guys, thought I'd jump on here and do a little video. I just got back from Baccarac last week, and I've been trying to play catch up. And I've had a lot of people reach out that are going on trips later this month, in December, or maybe even January, and they were asking a little bit about the bike. Got a little overwhelmed there trying to get in touch with everybody, but I wanted to go over my pattern. That way I could just send this to them and they can be able to decipher the pattern for themselves. But we went down there to Lake Baccarac Lodge from October 20th through the 26th. And let me say this about Baccarac. This was my 7th trip, I believe. And every single year it's different. You can't go down there and say, hey, I'm going to get on a top water bite, or hey, I'm going to get on a swim bait bite. They're very particular fish, very different fishery than what I'm used to here. You can pretty much pattern things a little bit better here in the States for some reason. I have no idea why, but the takeaway from that is listen to your guide, and also be flexible. Don't be dead set on a pattern when you go down there, or because when you go down there for trophy fish, you know. A lot of times you get into the schoolers and stuff. History has taught me that schoolers are usually smaller fish. Not always, but most of the time. They're fun to catch. They can take away a lot of time from catching your trophy stuff, if that's what you go down. Anybody can catch schoolers anywhere in the States. You know, when we went down there, we got on some schoolers on one day. It was cloudy. I think Jimmy caught 50, and I didn't pick up the top water bait. I was hunting for that trophy size, trying to go under the schoolers and get them. But I caught a couple smaller fish, you know, 5-pound range or 4-pound range. But usually I try to stay away from the schoolers if I possibly can. Sometimes the schoolers bite better in the morning. You know, you can fish for schoolers in the morning, they go trophy hunting in the afternoon. That works completely good. You know, topwater bite is hard to give up. I get that. So let me talk a little bit about my bite that I was on, and try to give you as much detail as you can to make sure that you make an educated decision. At the lodge, they have my swim bait rod, the 836. They have several of them there. I actually ran 4 of them, 3 or 4. 4 of them. You know, it's an excellent rod for a lot of different big baits down there. And what I stuck with mostly was based on Chad Meenan's feedback, was the Ghost Pink Lemonade color in 5 inches, what I mostly keyed in on. Chat throws the 6 inch a good bit. I just threw the 5, and I bought a bunch of spares with me, thankfully. I ended up probably losing 6 burritos total for various reasons. The main thing is I know you guys are going to give me a lot of shit, but I was using fluorocarbon when I was going down there. And for the very reason that I hate fluorocarbon is why I lost baits. You have to retire off, you know. You got a lot of rocks down there. You're throwing fluorocarbon a lot. You got a lot of torque on your knots. I was using 20-pound Tatsu, and then I ended up going to a 20-pound Daiwa summer rod because that's what Jimmy had. I broke off on both of them, you know. 2 of them were cast-offs, and the rest were on fish, I believe. You know, they were jumping, or I just set the hook and lost them on the hook set. The biggest thing I can stress to you guys is when you use a fluorocarbon down there is retie. I retied 4 times an hour, sometimes more. I was constantly checking my knots, and when I check my knots, I yank it hard, you know, and I want it to physically break because I want to tie a re-knot. And that was my pattern that I try to do, is just make sure that if I get the bites, that I can land them. But I was using 20-pound Tatsu, 20-pound Daiwa Samurai. I was using the 836, and I was actually using this reel, the loose 300 Super Duty and 7-2, I believe it is. But the main reason I went with fluorocarbon is we were fishing anywhere from 15 to 25 feet deep. I wanted that bait to get down there and stay down there. And if you guys know, braid kind of floats a little bit. I wanted to make sure that I was able to stay on that brush as much as I possibly could and fluorocarbon was just a better tool for that as far as getting it down there. Now, the breakage issue is a different story. I know a lot of people out there have swear up and down by fluorocarbon. I'm just not one of them. I've tried every expensive and cheap brand you could find, and I really can't find one that I really like. They just don't make a durable fluorocarbon. It's not really made for high impacts type stuff. You can make it work, keep retying, and making sure you check your knots. That's the best way to make it work, and be really anal about that. But what I was doing is, the areas we were fishing, I really can't tell you much, to be honest with you. They were where they were, you know. Sometimes they were points, sometimes they were just sides of points, sometimes they were open flats, sometimes they were where they were, you know. I couldn't tell you what pattern as far as location worked. But when you found them, you know, and it was just doing the KVD thing, the run and shoot off it, just keep going, keep casting, keep that bait down low, and keep making that transition. But the key is what I figured out was throw it out there, let it hit the bottom. And I used a smaller one because I didn't want it to go down into the brush. Keep in mind, Baccarac fluctuates, I think 70 to 80 feet every year. So it was way high this year, but all summer long, it was, you know, 80 feet low. So you had a lot of brush, sometimes 4 feet, 5 feet high. And this was flooded brush coming down from the shoreline. And we were doing is we'd throw the burrito and we would just stair step it down and tick in the brush. You want it so light that it doesn't dig in, but heavy enough that you would tick in the brush. So what I was doing is I was throwing it out. If I'm fishing open water, if I'm fishing the shore or whatever, I was throwing it out, let it hit the bottom, slow rolling with that 7-2, slow rolling. And when I kept that rod tip down, and when I lost contact with the brush, I stopped, and I let it sink, and then I started rolling a little bit more, you know. And then when I got too deep into the brush, maybe the brush had a little bit of rise in it, I would raise my rod tip and get it, kind of hop it over a little bit, but still try to keep in contact with that brush. And as it went to the other side, I dropped my rod tip down. When I stopped feeling the brush, I start dropping my rod tip until I start feeling it again. And if I don't feel it within the first 3 or 4 or 5 turns, I stop. And I let it hit the bottom. I watch my line, and when it jumps, I start my retrieve over. It was paramount that we reel the bait all the way to the boat. In fact, a lot of the fish that I lost were right at the boat. You know, they hit 10, 15, about 15 feet out. When that trajectory started to change, where it started to come up off the bottom, they would chase it up off the bottom and they would hit it right there at the boat. And one of the mistakes that I made on those fish is when they come up and they hit right there, the first thing you want to do is come up and raise them up, hit that rod tip up. And what that did is that catapulted the fish. If it was 8 or 9 pounder, I've catapulted 15-pound stripers before. You don't want to do that straight up strike. If they hit near the boat, you want to go sideways and keep them down, because if they start coming up, they jump, there's a chance that you're going to lose them, especially right at the boat like that. So just be mindful that when you get that hook set right at the boat, jerk sideways if you can, and not straight up. Unless you like seeing fish jump, and unless you like seeing fish jump off, fish of a lifetime, you do what you want to do. But that's one of the things that I learned, is start from the side and get them going sideways, parallel to the top of the water, instead of coming straight up perpendicular. But that was the burrito bite. I've caught all 70% of my fish, 65, 70% of my fish on this Ghost Lemonade burrito. The other fish that I caught were on a big spinnerbait. This is one of 4 that I've lost. Each spinnerbait I had was a different color. The biggest thing was it was an 1.5 ounce head, and it had a Hog Farmer spunk shad trailer. Love these trailers for spinnerbaits. It's got a hand-tied skirt, and it's got what you call those extended skirts. The really cool thing about the extended skirts is it gives you a bigger profile. Makes it a bigger bait, and it's got a lot more movement in it. I like the double wingleys because they didn't have as much lift. Now what this bait is really cool, was you couldn't keep it out of the trees. It got down there and it stayed down there, and you were crashing it through that brush. Just pulling it through, ripping it through. You can reel it a little bit faster. You can work it a little bit faster. And that's what the spinnerbait did for me. It was a 1.5 ounce. I don't even know what brand this was. I think I bought this at a trade show for Muskie in Ohio when I went to a trade show there. But I had like 4 of these and I lost them as well, fluorocarbon. But getting this thing down there deep was super, super easy. You can see how big of a head that is. And it's skirts hand tied. But this was the other bait that I used. These 2 were my 2 key baits in catching the fish. Jimmy was all over the board. He did burritos. He caught fish on chatterbaits. He caught fish on spinnerbaits. He caught fish on worms, speed worm or whatever, speed worm. He caught some fish on that. He caught a lot of fish on topwater. I didn't throw topwater very much at all. I threw the bull shad a little bit. I caught one on a prototype bull shad. Those were pretty much the baits that we fished, you know. I thought jig fishing might play, but that grass was too tall to do that jig stuff. You would have to hop it over every freaking limb. It would work, but it would just take some time. It wasn't an efficient presentation unless you really found a group of fish on a rock pile offshore or something where you weren't fishing a lot of brush. It was a little bit easier to do that. But that's the key for what we did is, you know, most of my fish came 15 to 22 feet or so. That's give or take. I had no sonar, so I'm just guessing off then. I would ask Poncho how deep it was, and he would give me an idea, but it seems like it was a deeper bite for us this year. We didn't get a whole lot of shallow stuff in the flats and that kind of stuff. Most of our fish were main lake. We didn't go into a lot of the coves. We were pretty much the big giant bluff wall island out there and toward the lodge. Most of our fish were that way, main lake stuff. So a lot of our fish were within sight of the lodge, not too far off. But the burrito was a big killer for us. I talked to one of the lodge managers. He said they caught over 40 fish over double digits on the burrito this year. Another lodge manager said they caught over a dozen that he remembers, you know. I don't get to see all the fish that they catch, but they catch a lot of double digits on the burritos down there. So give it a try. You know, anything that's similar to this should work. You know, any kind of chartreuse to tactical chartreuse, the ghost pink lemonade, the ghost grape lemonade, ghost blueberry, any of those type of colors with a little bit of muted chartreuse in it should work. But that's what we did. That's what I did the whole time trip, was throwing this stuff and a little bit on the spinnerbait. And we were all over, Jimmy was all over the board with a lot of other stuff, just trying to see if something stuck that was different. But we ended up catching, I think 2 days was over 40, and our best 5 for the week was 46 something, I think. But we had over 35 pounds every day. Doing what I just described in that same fashion. So, but I wish you guys the best. If you have any questions on the bite that I had or anything that I did differently or why I did what I did, Bill, shoot me a PM. Be happy to answer your questions, and see you guys out there. Good luck. And one other thing, if you catch a big fish on a burrito, send me a picture. Would love to have it. Put it on Instagram, especially if the bait is present in the picture. Would superbly love to have any kind of pictures and any kind of content you can give us. Videos, pictures, anything. So appreciate you guys. Good luck out there. Have fun at Baccarac. You gotta go once. If you enjoy it, you gotta go once in your life to go to Baccarac. It's a lot of fun. It's not an easy bite, but you gotta know how to fish. You know, you gotta be able to adjust, and you gotta be able to put a pattern together in your head and listen to your guide and stuff. They know a lot about how the fish bite, but you got to keep that bait on the bottom. It's very, very crucial that you keep it down there. So good luck to you guys.